So this guy is about to dress up in a cheap Santa Claus suit, steal more than $1 million, and then orchestrate a brutal, cold-blooded murder. But the craziest part, he almost got away with all of it, until a piece of new technology absolutely ruined his life over a decade later. The guy's name is Jeffrey Stenner. It's the late 1980s, and Jeff is in his mid-30s, living in Connecticut, and he has a massive problem. See, Jeff owns a bar and a restaurant, but both places are struggling hard. He was drowning in debt, and he desperately needed some cash to keep his business going on. And one day in 1987, the universe practically drops the perfect opportunity right in his lap. That's when Jeff hires a guy named Robert Schmidt as a bartender and a bouncer. The two actually hit it off and become really good friends, but more importantly, Schmidt tells Jeff about his other job. Schmidt works as an armed guard for Loomis. And if you know anything about armored car companies, Loomis is one of the biggest in the US. Schmidt is constantly moving massive shipments of cash, and massive shipments of cash are exactly what Jeff needs. So these two turds go together and cook up a plan. Using Schmidt's inside knowledge, they're gonna rob a Loomis truck. They recruit a few extra goons, and when the big day comes, Jeff pulls a classic misdirection. He calls the local police to report a fake armed robbery on the opposite side of town. While the cops are distracted, Jeff and the two other guys in ski masks roll up in a Loomis truck. With guns drawn, they manage to grab 5 massive bags of cash, speed off, and completely disappear. They made off with over $1 million, and the police had zero clue who did it. So the plan worked perfectly. Jeff suddenly has all his money to throw around. But there's a catch. Jeff is terrible with money. By 1988, just a year later, he's completely broke again. He blew all the haste money trying to fix his restaurant, and it didn't work. So what's a desperate businessman to do? Rob another truck. But this time, he decides to get theatrical. It's Christmas time, so Jeff's brilliant master plan is to rob an armored truck. While dressed up as Santa Claus, he links up with Schmidt again, who agrees to be the getaway driver, but Schmidt doesn't work for Loomis anymore, so they target a Dunbar armored truck instead. They head over to the drop spot. Santa Jeff's walk up to the guards, pulls out a gun, and is like, "Hoo-hoo, hand over the cash," or whatever armored robbers say. He grabs the bags, sprints back to Schmidt's getaway car, and they speed away into the winter night. This time, they steal about $700,000, and once again, they don't get caught. But Jeff was about to make a completely amateur mistake that would change everything. Another year passes, and it's now 1989, and Jeff is starting to sweat. Word on the street is that his old buddy Schmidt has been at the bar yapping to people around town about that first $1 million robbery. Loose lips sink ships, you know. And to make matters worse, the FBI subtly starts showing up at Jeff's restaurant, interviewing his employees about the armored truck case. And guess who they pull into the interrogation room? It was Schmidt. Jeff gets insanely paranoid, and he thinks Schmidt is an informant. But here's where you realize how cold-blooded Jeff actually is. A while back, Jeff took a $100,000 life insurance policy on Schmidt, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. So Jeff realizes if he takes out his best friend, he eliminates his biggest liability and gets a payday, of course. So Jeff goes to a guy he knows from the gym. His real name is Scott Cancel. Yes, his last name is literally Cancel. Jeff says, "I need you to kill someone." And Cancel says, "All right." Cancel puts together a small crew of goons, and the big night comes. In December 1989, Jeff tells Schmidt to come over to the restaurant, claiming he needs him to run a quick errand with some guys. Imagine being Schmidt here. You trust your boss, who's actually your best friend. You get in the car with a few guys you don't really know, thinking it's just a normal night. A guy named John is driving, and suddenly one of the goons at the back seat loops a rope around Schmidt's neck and violently strangles him while another guy beats him. Schmidt doesn't survive, he actually dies. They drive to a local church parking lot, dump his body in a snowbank, and take off. The very next day, police find the body and they call Jeff down to identify it, since he was his boss, of course. Jeff walks into the morgue, puts on the whole fake performance, crying, acting utterly shocked, and then, minutes later, he contacts his insurance agent to make sure his $100,000 policy is still active. That's actually pure evil. But Jeff's lucky streak was officially over. Schmidt's grieving brother goes to the cops and says, "Look, months ago my brother confessed to me that he and Jeff robbed those armored trucks." The police start digging into Jeff and they immediately find the dumbest mistake in the criminal history. Remember that second robbery, the Santa Claus heist? The getaway car Jeff used was a leased Volkswagen Jetta that he leased in his own real name. They also pull his bank records and see massive cash deposits right after the robberies. And bam, Jeff is arrested. He takes a plea deal for the heist and gets 8 years in prison. But here's the crazy part. The police do not have enough evidence to pin the murder on him. So Jeff serves his time for the robberies, and it genuinely looks like he's going to get away with murdering his best friend. Until a whole decade goes by and it's now 2001. The State Crime Lab installs a brand new technology, an automated fingerprint identification system, or AFIS. Investigators decide to run some unidentified fingerprints they found in the car the night Schmidt was murdered. They get a perfect match. The prints belong to John, the goon who was driving the car that night. So police bring John in and he folds like a cheap lawn chair. He confesses to everything and rats out the entire crew, including Jeff. And everyone goes down. The two goons get 25 years each. The hitman, Scott Cancel, gets 60 years. And Jeffrey Stenner, the businessman who dressed as Santa Claus to steal $1 million and ordered a hit on his best friend, is found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to 16 years in prison, ensuring he will spend the rest of his life exactly where he belongs. If you want more crazy true crime stories like this, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.